Good
Easy as
evening
it
and
looks.
welcome to the very first Maplewood City Council meeting of 2020. It's been a little while since the council has met. I think just a little bit over a month, which is a little bit unusual for us. And what I like to do is I like to start off with something that has happened in the city. And tonight I wanted to talk about a recap of 2019 on some of the activities over at Sandy Lake. Some of you probably remember there were some problems over in our Sandy Lake neighborhood where the St. Paul Regional Water facility was doing an awful lot of dumping of materials that they were getting from some of the water repair that they were doing all over the both St. Paul and Maplewood and Ramsey County, and they were dumping there, and there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of dust, and it really created a lot of problems for our residents over there. And what happened was, this really started, I think, back in 2018, over the summer of 2018, and the residents brought it forward, and I would say that ultimately, there was a partnership that was formed with the Regional Water Service and the City of Maplewood to resolve those issues. And we all were given a 2019 recap. I know because I am now the Water Commissioner, I get these on a monthly basis to see that kind of problem. Now, one of the things that was really, such a nuisance for so many of the residents that were there in that neighborhood, because there were trucks and a lot of slamming of rear tailgates and the beep, beep, beep sound and lots of trucks. And I have to say that Maplewood and St. Paul Water got together and worked with the help of a mediator and with the neighborhood, and I am very pleased over the results because, we met back in March of 2019, and St. Paul Regional Water committed to making operational adjustments and improvements to the activities, including reducing the concrete and asphalt hauling and crushing. Back in the summer of 2018, there were anywhere from 38 to 56 trips into that facility on a daily basis, and that has now been reduced to 4 to 8 trips per day. Dust has been controlled over there, noise has been controlled, an alternate site has been found over at the at Pig's Eye in St. Paul to address all of the a lot of the storage of materials, waste materials that were being dug up when streets are dug up to fix water. And so I communicated with some of the neighbors over there, and I think that everyone is very optimistic that the issues that came up in Sandy Lake have been resolved. And as a result, I know the neighbors get a monthly update on what has been happening and the changes that are happening. I think St. Paul Regional Water has been very responsive to the needs of the community and our neighborhood, and it's, I think, a really good example of how public entities can work together to resolve problems. So, council members, that's a nice way to start off in 2020 with a real success story like that the problems of Sandy Lake, I think, have been resolved. We certainly are continuing to watch what happens with Sandy Lake, and now that we have a council member who is on the Water Commission, I think that is another really good change that was made so that we can keep on top of some of these things. So with that, I am going to call 3 very special guests up to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to call up Carter and Colin McKay and their sister Jasmine. So the 3 of you, if you would come up to the dais, they are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right up here at the microphone. Jasmine's a little short. We can't really see you. There you go. Awesome, thank you. Would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in a little bit. City Clerk Sint, would you do our roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Neblett.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. First item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Juniman. Approval of the agenda. Is there further additions to the agenda? Councilmember Juniman?
One council presentation, a recognition of one of our cities, St. Louis Park.
I'd like to add the Hmong New Year and also an issue with garbage pickup over the holiday due to the ice storm and some issues that came up with that. Council members, anything else that you'd like to add? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Let's move on to the minutes. The December 9th, 2019 City Council Workshop minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Knutson, seconded by Neblett. Approval of the December 9th, 2019 City Council Workshop minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain, noted for the record. Councilmember Smith was not present. Thank you. Motion, is there a motion for the December 9th, 2019 City Council meeting minutes?
I move approval.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
With one abstention? Thank you. Okay, administrative presentations. Council calendar update. City Manager Coleman, that's yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is just an informational update for you on upcoming agenda items and workshop sessions schedule, and other times when we might be together, which will be this Wednesday, January 15th, for our State of the City event. That will be at the YMCA MCC from 11 to 1 p.m. On January 27th, we'll have a joint workshop that Maplewood EDA and the Housing and Economic Development Commission will be continuing our strategic planning initiatives, and that will happen from 4 to 7 on the 27th. And on February 10th, we are going to bring for you at the workshop the fire station pre-design review. Staff has been working really hard to kind of get sort of the space needs addressed, and the architect and staff will be telling you about what that's looking like. It's pretty exciting. City Council meeting on February 10th will also have an update on the strategic plan for the last quarter of last year. Some of the things that we work on under the council comments, we have Tobacco 21, which some of you may have been aware that President Trump has declared that the age should be 21 across the nation. There is some follow-up work for states, and Mayor, if you so choose, Mr. Beatty can kind of give you the lay of the land and what that actually means for cities and what we're doing to research that.
Thank you. I brought this up with City Manager Coleman this morning because this is a federal law, and my question was, what kind of implementation do we need in terms of the federal law? Mr. Beatty, would you like to comment on that, please?
Sure, Madam Mayor, Council. Well, as both of you have said, that changes federal law. We cannot enforce federal law, so I don't think it has any direct, immediate effect on us. One of the things under federal law, though, is that states will have to comply within 3 years. And the stick the feds are going to use is that if you don't change your state law within that period of time to conform, some of the federal aid will be withheld. So I think states will eventually do that. The Minnesota legislature convenes in about a month, and so I don't know what their plans are, but eventually they will have to make some sort of change, and that might be an opportunity for us to see what they do and then bring city ordinances into conformance with state law.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Love and his staff have been working with a consultant on the pedestrian safety plan, and that has been a pretty complex undertaking, but we'll soon have some information to share with you on one of the upcoming workshops. The sales tax, the tax exemption legislation is in process. Mr. Sable and myself will be meeting with legislators this week on Thursday to make sure that they have everything they need from us to start that process. So we're hoping that we can get that passed at the legislature. In doing so, we would be able to use that tax exemption for the construction of our new fire station, and will save us at least $350,000, if not more, depending on the price of the project. So we're pretty excited about it. We got a good reception with our last meeting with the Senate side, and now this week we're going to talk to our House representatives. So we're hoping that will be a smooth process, and we'll get that legislation adopted this year. We also talked this evening about the reviewing of the process for our board and commissioners and how we appoint and interview those applicants. And we discussed some of the things. I actually went to all of the commission board meetings last year and engaged with them in a conversation on how they thought we might improve that process. And I brought back some ideas for you, and many of those were adopted tonight, so we will start working on including that with the boards and commissions. So thank you very much for that input this evening. And that's all I have. We are starting to get the calendar put together for next year. This is always kind of a slow time for everybody. The parks aren't as busy and things aren't happening, but we are gearing up for a new year in 2020.
Okay, thank you very much. On to council presentations. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. On top of, I guess you would say, the announcement about the federal law for Tobacco 21, one of our cities that's almost always ahead of the game, St. Louis Park, went on and went a step further. They had been looking at it longer than we had, and they have totally outlawed vaping in the city of St. Louis Park. It's not an age limit. It's not based on flavoring. It's nothing. It's outlawed. So I'm just bringing that up to say perhaps we're not done. I don't know. But it's finally hitting on people with the things they've heard, particularly medically, that maybe there's something that needs to be done. So I just wanted to point that out and congratulate them for being brave. Because we know you hear both sides when you sit in a place like this, and it takes some courage to move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up the Hmong New Year. I was honored to be one of the speakers, as was Chief Nadeau, at the Hmong New Year that was celebrated. It was a collaborative celebration with the St. Paul Hmong Alliance Church and the American Hmong Alliance Church, both of which are in Maplewood. And it was a wonderful celebration. They had great food. Yes, it was really a wonderful celebration of the New Year. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to ask City Manager Coleman to weigh in on this, because I heard from some of our residents about a problem with garbage pickup in South Maplewood. Now, the problem happened really, as I see it, kind of a perfect storm, that we had, all the garbage was delayed by a day because of the holidays. And then we had the ice storm that happened, by the way, the very same day that Chief Nadeau and I had to go over to the Hmong Alliance Church that morning, and it was like driving on, a skating rink. But there was a problem with Republic, and I certainly heard about it, and I want to acknowledge those residents and thank them for bringing this to our attention. It was certainly problematic because many people have celebrations, and there's a lot more garbage, a lot more recycling that needs to go out, and Republic missed their pickup. And so I certainly talked with City Manager Coleman, and I wanted you to kind of weigh in on what happened, because it was disappointing. We had just gone through the whole RFP process. They had their little snafu with billing, with sending out incorrect bills, and then now this. And so we certainly are listening to what residents have to say. And City Manager Coleman, do you want to talk about the meeting that you had?
I'd be happy to, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I met with Romac Franklin, who is the Municipal Services Manager for Republic on Monday, January 6th. And we had a good meeting. I did explain to him that we were very disappointed We understand the weather situation. He indicated to me that they did send out all the crews that morning on Saturday, the 28th, at 7 a.m. All the trucks went out. But they were concerned about sliding and the really bad things that could happen if trucks were sliding out of control, both to personal and property damage. And the higher-ups at Republic called them all back in. As a result of that, about 1,800 customers did not have their pickup that Saturday. I indicated to Romac that we were really disappointed, primarily not that they took the trucks off the road, but really how they handled the customer service aspect of it. That they could have been a little more quick on the robocalls that they do for our residents that subscribe to their service, and that we really felt that should have been handled a little more quickly. One of the suggestions, or one of the things that I asked of Republic, was that they put me on their robocall list so that when this happens, at least I'm aware and I can communicate to the council what's happening, and also ask them to give me a personal phone call. So I gave him my home phone number to tell him that he could actually call me to let me know when something was happening, so we could talk it through and so we could better understand it, and then I could convey that to you, and you could convey that to residents. So we had a pretty good conversation. I think one of the things that it was hard for people to understand was when you have Christmas and New Year's. One was on Wednesday of one week, and New Year's is on Wednesday of the next week. When they couldn't go on Saturday, they didn't have a day to make that up. So people were really inconvenienced because they had 2 weeks of no service. And that's tough, and that happened metro-wide. It wasn't just Maplewood who didn't have service. The entire metropolitan area closed down their service, and where I live, that got screwed up too. So it was, things happen, but we did emphasize that we would really like to see a little bit better customer service and how they communicate when these kinds of things happen. I think we got the message through to them. I did mention that we had concerns about customer service before we approved the new contract, and so we really want them to be diligent in how they approach these kinds of problems.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Juniman.
Can I verify, did anyone in that area of the city have trouble with their recycling pickup?
No. I will tell you that one of the concerns that was raised by the residents was that while Republic pulled off all the trucks in the morning, so did Tennis, but Tennis then sent them back out in the afternoon. Okay. And they were picking up, starting at, I think, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Because the weather did warm up and the ice melted.
I just didn't want to recycle it.
Right.
Caught in the crossfire.
I did ask about that, too. So.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I actually was one of the people who did not have their trash picked up, and it was a frustrating situation. And I think the fact that Tennis did pull it off, that we made it that much worse, because there was that comparative situation with the two vendors. And so I think that it's too bad that they made the choices that they did. I think, these are the kinds of things that we need to review on an annual basis, and certainly at contract renewal times. And, I empathize too, because with the centralization of trash hauling, whereas before people might be able to fire their hauler and hire someone else, they're now in a situation where they can't. That's frustrating, and I get that. At the same time, there's benefits as well. So it's a balanced situation. I think as we talk about that perfect storm, the fact that this not only happened right after the contract renewal, but it also happened when people started getting their new bills, which have gone up significantly than from the prior contract. It's kind of it's a pile-on, right? And even though I feel like the deal we negotiated is good compared to what other cities are paying and the way the market is, and part of the reason it went up so much was because we did such a great job holding it down the first time, but it's hard to look at it of I'm really glad about my bill going up because it's been low so far. That's not a very compelling place to be, but it is kind of the reality. So it's just a lot that happened at once, and I think that we need to just keep an eye on them and keep pressure on them because we owe it to the residents as being the person who's kind of making those decisions on their behalf now.
Exactly, which is why I wanted to bring it up tonight. So thank you very much, Council. Moving on to presentation of citizen awards. Chief Nadeau, this is yours.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor, members of the council. On a November afternoon, John Lee heard screaming outside of his Goodrich neighborhood home. He looked out and saw two pit bulls attacking Carter McKay, an 11-year-old boy. Putting his own safety at risk, he went out and tried striking the dogs to get them off of the boy. They turned on him, biting and seriously puncturing his arm. Around that same time, Evelyn Hanson Florin was passing by in her car. She jumped out armed with the only weapon that she had, an umbrella. After a couple of swings, she drove the dogs off. She put Carter in the back of her car in case the pit bulls came back to attack. Firefighter paramedics arrived quickly, stabilized, and rushed Carter to the hospital, where he remained for several days. Police officers fanned the neighborhood to investigate. The attack on Carter was horrific. It's likely he'll suffer permanent scarring. However, Good Samaritans John Lee and Evelyn Hanson Florin intervened, discarding their own personal safety, and if they had not, the result most assuredly would have been much, much worse. For their actions on that November afternoon, Maplewood Public Safety is going to be doing an awards presentation for John Lee and Evelyn Hanson Florin, and they will be receiving Maplewood's Public Safety Citizens Award. I'd also like to point out that Carter is here tonight, as is his mother, Christina Folkjer. So if we could have Evelyn Hanson Florin come up. Dear Ms. Hanson Florin, on November 18, 2019, as you were driving down the street, you observed two dogs attacking a juvenile male. Without regard for your own safety, you exited your vehicle and approached the dogs with an umbrella. Using this umbrella as a weapon, you were able to get the dogs to run away and quickly got the boy to safety in your vehicle until first responders could arrive. Without your intervention, the dog would have likely further harmed and terrorized these people. While we always caution citizens to avoid taking undue risk, it is this sort of care and courage that you showed for the victim that helps our community's desirable places to live and visit. Congratulations and thank you for your efforts in this incident. You will be formally recognized with a Citizen Service plaque for your interventions on that day. So this is the Citizens Award for you, your letter of appreciation, and a plaque presented to you on behalf of Maplewood Public Safety. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your bravery.
All right, John Lee, could come up. Right there. Dear Mr. Lee, on November 18, 2019, you heard a commotion outside of your residence and upon inspection observed a juvenile male being attacked by two dogs. Without regard for your own safety, you proceeded outside to assist the boy. You swatted at the dogs, at which time the dogs turned on you and bit you, causing you an injury. A second concerned citizen drove by as the attack was occurring and approached the dogs as well. Using an umbrella, she was able to get the dogs to run away and got the boy to safety in her vehicle until first responders arrived. Without your intervention, the victim would have likely been further harmed and terrorized by those dogs. While we always caution citizens to avoid taking undue risk, it is this sort of care and courage you showed for the victim that helps our communities to be a desirable place to live and visit. Congratulations and thank you for your efforts in this incident. You're being formally recognized and presented with a Citizen Service plaque for your actions on January 13, 2020 at the Maplewood City Council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Would the council like to come down and get a photograph
Sure.
with our two community heroes?
Thank you for your bravery as well. And what I'd like to do too is have the family come up, and Carter and Colin and Jasmine, and why don't we do 2 pictures, one with the family and our 2 heroes here, and then one with the council. That's your picture.
All right, good stuff. Thank you very much.
We will fully understand, for those people who were here for that presentation, that you do not have to stay for our consent agenda.
Oh, come on.
and our-
Feasibility study.
Yes.
We have feasibility studies for road projects, so we will not be offended. Thank you all for coming.
Feasibility study.
Mayor, I have to say that this is a long time ago, but I was on the receiving end of a very like situation. I was walking my dog and another dog attacked us. And it was a neighbor who saved my neck. And I can only imagine how Carter must have felt, because I thought, okay, well, I'm glad I've had this long a life, because when there's a dog bearing down on you with his teeth hanging out and roaring at you, there isn't much else you can think about. So the fact that people come to your rescue it is really a miracle.
They're heroes, and it was really nice to be able to see them and see that Carter is doing so well. So we have our 2020 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and miscellaneous groups. City Manager Coleman, do you want to tee this up?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. At the first meeting of the year, the City Council officially makes annual appointments to boards, commissions, and groups of which the city is a member, and to those who serve at the pleasure of the council. So after we go through those appointments, we will need a motion to approve the 2020 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and groups.
Okay, just kind of an explanation for people who may be watching. Not only do we serve as city council members, but we also serve as liaisons for the city on a number of our internal commissions, and then also groups that meet with the county, that meet with Metro Transit. So there's a whole lot of different kinds of involvement that city council members are expected to get engaged with. And the way that we do this, well, since I've been on the council, it's pretty much by seniority. It does play a role in it. And so what I did was I met first with Councilmember Juniman, who is our most senior council member, respectfully so, and I asked her about, her appointments, and do you want to explain, you're satisfied with your appointments?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with the status quo, if you will.
Okay.
Both of the environmental ones, and then the Ramsey County dispatch policy. I don't think anybody else is going to try and break my arm to get that, but whatever. At some point, somebody's going to have to, but yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
And then next would be Councilmember Smith. I have not spoken with you. I reserved that for the DS, so tell us, well, that we can only talk to one other council member, so your thoughts on your suggested appointments?
I feel good about them.
Okay.
Unless there is something, Mayor, you feel like you may want to make a change, I'd be open to, whatever you feel you might want to do. But
Okay.
I don't have a change on my mind that I feel strongly about.
Okay. Next, in terms of seniority, I checked on this, it would be Councilmember Knutson. And I just want to make one correction on this, that the Development Committee, right now, it says Mayor Abrams and Councilmember Neblett. It actually should be Councilmember Knutson. This is a rotating role that this basically is to work with me and the council member and myself work to complete the performance evaluation for City Manager Coleman. And so everyone else has served. Last year, it was myself and Councilmember Smith. And then this year, it should be Councilmember Knutson. And then the following year, Councilmember Neblett. So we just, that way, we each get a year. So can we make that correction? To replacing Neblett on here with Knutson. Councilmember Knutson, your thoughts on your proposed roles with commissions and other groups?
They're just fine.
Okay. Councilmember Neblett, I know that you wanted to raise something. Do you want to do that now, please?
Yes, please. And as the least senior of the group, I started to say the baby of the group.
We all served that one.
Yes. I have a meeting conflict with the Park and Recs Commission. They meet on Wednesdays. I think it's the second or third Wednesday of the month. And I also serve on the Ramsey County Library Board, and it meets at the exact same time, the exact same day.
Okay. Council members, do I have another volunteer who would like to sit in and serve on the Parks and Rec Commission?
I will.
Councilmember Knutson?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Trying to balance it out, is there anything else that you would like, maybe Councilmember Neblett might pick up for you? Or do you want to, are you?
It's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, the other two committees are on the same night, so
okay,
it's
Thank you very much,
a lot of
Councilmember.
laughs.
all right.
You know, with this seniority thing, it's pretty funny. It's like twins that were born 10 minutes apart.
Wait a minute.
Well, of the two of you, who's more senior? Let me see. Who do we
Okay,
interview
okay.
first?
I did have to check on that,
Yes,
that's true, that's true.
That's right.
Okay, hearing no other comments, are we good with this, council members? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the 2020 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and miscellaneous groups with that noted change, substituting Councilmember Knutson for Councilmember Neblett on the Development Committee?
Second?
Moved by Juniman, seconded, I heard Councilmember Smith first. The motion to approve the 2020 City Council appointments as noted. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to the consent agenda. Councilmember Juniman, when I was reviewing my packet this weekend, I assumed that you would want to highlight, we have a whole list of donations. Do you want to identify those for us?
I think it's 10, 11, and 13. Oh, we probably should do the SCORE grant as well, sorry. So it's 8.
I'm sorry, what?
SCORE grant.
Okay.
So it's 9, 10, 11, and 13.
10, 11.
9, 2?
Sorry, 8, sorry.
8, 10, 11, and
I
13.
better adjust my bifocals, huh? It's 8, 10, 11, and 13.
Okay, so which staff person is on for the SCORE grant? Oh, Sean, do you want to talk about the SCORE grant, please, Ms. Finwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So tonight you are looking at the actual agreement for the SCORE grant, which the city applied for last fall. So SCORE stands for Select Committee on Recycling and the Environment, and it's a grant by Ramsey County to the city to help fund our recycling program. The city can use those funds to pay for the collection of recyclables, for administration, promotion activities, equipment, and/or organics collection. And historically, the city of Maplewood has used that to fund our recycling program and pay our contractor for the collection of the recycling. So this year, the city of Maplewood received a grant in the amount of $98,150, and that's based on the population of the city. And then this is the second year that they're also offering an incentive, and that incentive is for the amount of $18,695, and that is to incentivize cities to implement additional recycling programs. And what the city of Maplewood has chosen, as in a coordination with the county, is to, number one, promote their biz recycling operation with our businesses, and also try to improve and increase the number of businesses and small churches that opt into the city's recycling program. And then secondly, to promote a new grant and resource program they have for multi-unit buildings. So all of this will work nicely with the rollout of our new recycling contract, which does offer those recycling dumpsters for both multifamily and our businesses. So it will coordinate very nicely.
Thank you very much.
And Mayor, I think we should acknowledge that it's through the work of people like Sean who have to go through the grant application that we get this money. They don't just drop it on us.
Thank you for that. It's appreciated. And then moving on to number 10, the donation from Schmelz Countryside for $2,000. Who wants to talk about that? Chief Nadeau.
Mayor, members of the council, actually Chief Lucan helped write this up, but the Schmelz family and Schmelz Countryside has been extremely generous.
I'm sorry, I didn't see Chief Lucan sitting in the back. I'm sorry.
They've been extremely generous. I understand that this has been something that's gone on for years, where Schmelz has supported Maplewood Public Safety, both police and fire. And so this year, they sent a $1,000 check to the police department and a $1,000 check to the fire department. Again, just wanting to support public safety in a really profound way. And so, as they have in other years, they sent the check with their thanks. We did write a letter of appreciation and thanks to them. They're a great community contributor, and we're certainly appreciative for that donation.
It is very much appreciated, thanks. The donation from Kathy Peterson. Chief Lucan, would you like to talk about this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Kathy Peterson had called here not too long ago saying she wanted to make a donation to the fire department. And in doing so, her donation was made for the simple reason of the quality of care she said she received, the great customer service that we had given her. But above all, it was about the way the firefighter medics at the time provided her with everything that was happening. And they continually updated on every process and procedure that they were doing. She said she felt so comfortable and so well taken care of that she really wanted to make that known. And by doing so, she provided us with that $150 donation that we are so thankful for. So our public safety group, once again, is meeting its needs, and we live up to our motto of service before self.
It's a testament to the quality of service that we
Yes.
provide, so thank you very much.
You are
It's
more
really neat,
welcome.
isn't
Thank
it?
you.
Thanks, Steve.
And number 13, the donation from Sherman and Associates. Who has that one?
Chief Nadeau.
Chief Nadeau?
Mayor, members of the council, Sherman and Associates hosted a national night out at the new apartments at Frost and English, and Public Safety was able to stop by, interact with them and their new residents. We had a great night on National Night Out, but to show their appreciation, I think that they took some donations, and they presented both the police department and the fire department with a check for $300 for a total of $600. Just looking to supplement any needs or other things that they could help support Maplewood Public Safety, and we talked about putting that towards our community outreach efforts. And so they also received a letter of appreciation and thank you. And, again, we enjoy their support.
Thank you very much. Council members, we've gone through the highlighted items. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda items G1 through 15.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Consent agenda items 1 through 15. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have no
It's-
public hearings tonight.
It's really nice to be in a community where people recognize and appreciate the services. It's really, it's
Yes,
really
it is.
cool.
Yes, it is. And what's interesting, when I was reading my packet, it's not only businesses, but it's residents as well.
Yes.
And I think that really speaks very highly of the staff that we have here in
Yeah.
Maplewood.
Yeah.
Made me proud to read all of that in my council packet. No public hearings, no unfinished business. We are on to new business. And Ms. Finwall, you are on. We're going to talk about climate adaptation planning process.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I just have a few bullet points for you so you can follow along. So tonight we're talking about Maplewood Climate Adaptation Plan, and we are going to outline the planning process, and we are requesting that the City Council appoint one member to serve on the Climate Adaptation Steering Committee. So to begin, in January of 2019, the City Council approved a resolution authorizing the submittal of an environmental assistance grant for climate adaptation planning from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Maplewood's partner, Ted Redman of Pale Blue Dot LLC, submitted the application on behalf of the cities of Maplewood, Burnsville, Faribault, and Albert Lee. And that grant was awarded, and it does build. The purpose of that grant is to identify adaptation goals, strategies, and actions Maplewood can take to address climate vulnerabilities in the community. And that will build on the Maplewood Climate Vulnerability Assessment, which was conducted in 2017, and that looked at the risks to Maplewood from climate change as well as vulnerable populations who may be severely impacted more so than others. The grant funding is $7,500 from the MPCA, and then Pale Blue Dot is donating $20,000 towards that, and the City of Maplewood has committed to $3,150 of staff time. This directly ties to the comp plan. It addresses the adaptation planning goal, which we adopted in our sustainability chapter of the 2040 comp plan. However, it does not address the mitigation planning goal, so we'll have to work on that after this process. So to outline the process, it's in 3 phases. In the fall of 2019, we started community engagement and data collection. We attended several events such as Waterfest and National Night Out, a couple of the community events with our police department, and we did this engagement. And we have a survey that's out there. We published this in our Seasons, the fall edition of Seasons, which is our environmental newsletter that comes out quarterly. So we did this engagement and data collection in the fall, and now we're starting the goal setting and initial drafting. And then throughout the summer, we'll have a second round of engagement and the final draft of that climate adaptation plan. So to guide this goal setting, we are putting together a steering committee, and that committee will consist of a city council member, Environmental and Natural Resource Commission, city and county staff teams, additional jurisdictions such as the Watershed District, and agencies and organizations working with vulnerable populations. So right now, we're gathering that team. That steering committee will be about 20 people, we think. And we hope to have 4 meetings throughout the next 5 months, beginning on February 20th. Ted Redmond is here tonight to answer any of your questions. He will be the consultant working on the project. And once the draft is finalized, we will bring this back to the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission and the City Council for final approval. So I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Ms. Finwell, I have just a question for clarification. What is the total grant? I know there are 4 different cities involved, but what is the total grant that Maplewood received?
Madam Mayor, would you mind if I ask Ted Redmond to answer that question?
Certainly.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Redmond, would you like to join us up at the dais, please?
Good morning, Mayor, and evening.
Something.
It's been a long
close
day
enough.
for me. Mayor and members of the council. So I'm Ted Redmond with Pale Blue Dot. The total grant award is $30,000, but it's divided amongst the 4 different cities. And it's a direct, they'll pay the consultant team as we get along. The total project effort for the 4 cities is about $90,000 effort. And as Sean was indicating, we're donating in-kind time to cover the difference. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Juniman.
First of all, I'm really excited that this is coming to us. We're really getting into the flow now. And then I would like to point out to you that Mr. Redmond we are very fortunate that he is on our Environmental and Natural Resources Commission. He is a resident. And he's an expert in what he does. And a lot of other people aren't the recipients of his expertise on an ongoing basis. So we are most grateful, and I just wanted you to know that. We are most grateful.
Thank you very much. Council members, the recommended action is that we discuss the planning process and we appoint 1 city council member. And it seems to be, out of the group of us, there is maybe an apparent candidate that might be a good fit. Do we need to do do we need to vote on the appointment or a nomination,
She
Mr. Beatty?
volunteers.
Madam Mayor, Council, I think that an appointment, a vote would be appropriate.
Okay. Then, council members, I will nominate Councilmember Juniman as our representative on the Climate Adaptation Steering Committee.
Here, here, second.
Oh,
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Neblett. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman, you now have 1 more.
Thank you very
assignment.
much.
Thank
Yes,
you
I'm
very
excited
much.
for this one, though.
Thank
a lot.
Okay, and now we move on to the first of our 3 road projects. Thank you, Mr. Redmond, for being here tonight, and thank you for serving on our commission. Much appreciated. Mr. Love, you have the next 3
boring reports.
topics for us.
Boring
It's the Steve Love Show.
The first one that we're going to talk about is the authorizing preparation of plans and specifications and calling for a public hearing on Dennis McClelland area street improvements, City Project 19-10.
Mayor and Council, good evening. If I could have the PowerPoint. So as you mentioned, this is the first of 3 projects we're going to talk about. This is the Dennis McClelland Area Street Improvement Project. As you can see on the map here, it's the neighborhood highlighted in black. It lies north of Upper Afton, west of Century Avenue, and south of Battle Creek. Overall, there's about 2.04 miles of streets in this project. The average pavement condition index, or PCI, is 36 out of 100, where 100 is a brand new road. Picture here kind of shows you some of the conditions that we have out there. Obviously, the pavement's deteriorated to the point where patching no longer is an effective maintenance measure. There's a number of drainage issues in this area. There's very little storm sewer infrastructure in this neighborhood, as well as there's no curb and gutter system in the neighborhood as well. So what we've done so far with resident communication, we sent out an informational packet. This is our standard packet. We sent it out on October 14th. This provides residents with a lot of different information about what a street project is, assessment information. We send out a questionnaire. Then we held a neighborhood meeting on November 6th. We did our presentation followed by question and answers. A number of things were discussed. A couple of the big things that were discussed was concern about the street width and parking concerns. We did receive a petition from some of the residents that live in this area. Again, the two main things is they wanted the street widths to remain the same width, and they also wanted parking on both sides of the street. When we did our topographic survey, we took a measurement of the existing streets out there. The majority of the streets range from a little over 29 feet to 30 feet wide. Our living streets policy, as well as our requirements for stormwater, we really want to keep that overall impervious surface either at or less than what is out there today, because that brings in additional water quality treatments and increased funds to the project. But we also want to, work with the residents on the project as well. So we are proposing, as part of the feasibility study, a little bit of a different width for our road. It fits within our Living Streets policy. We're proposing a 29-foot road, which is face-to-face a curb. So it gives you an overall width of 30.33 feet. So essentially, we're trying to match what is out there today for the existing widths. However, our Living Streets policy for neighborhoods, and I'll flip back to the map here. As you can see, this is it's not when I say a destination neighborhood, there's not a park or a playground or a school that is internal to the neighborhood itself. So we are not recommending internal sidewalks, but we are recommending a sidewalk system along Upper Afton that would tie to Century and down to Afton Park. The stormwater in this neighborhood all flows directly north to Battle Creek. Battle Creek is an impaired water body, and it's also 40 feet below the neighborhood. So that whole neighborhood all flows to the north, so that there's some significant drainage challenges with that, which is, again, why we're trying to limit the amount of impervious. We want to try to keep it to roughly the same. And then with that, without having sidewalks internal, our policy, our Living Streets policy, recommends parking be limited to one side of the streets. This has been done in a number of neighborhoods that we have designed to our Living Streets policy. We haven't had any issues that I've heard of enough parking on streets. Most of the time, parking is it's an event-based, and people can always contact the police department if they're looking for a temporary waiver for a larger event. So what does this project look like? We're looking at a full street reconstruction project. So that we're essentially putting in new curb and gutter. We're going to put a whole new road section that's new aggregate, new asphalt. We're looking at significant storm sewer upgrades. As I mentioned, the challenges of the impaired water body as well as the drop in elevation. Sidewalks, we're looking at putting that sidewalk on the north side of Upper Afton. One of the things it's also going to do is allow us to consolidate. Right now, there's a crosswalk at every single road when you looked at that map. So there's like 7 or 8 crosswalks in a row that are 2 homes apart. We're going to install a sidewalk, or we're proposing to install a sidewalk on the north side, and then have 3 key crossing points. One down near the park, one near where Battle Creek Trail connects to the trail on the south side of Upper Afton, and one at the school. And we are talking to the school because you probably know that they're in the process of looking at doing updates to that school. So we're working with them on what that crossing looks like and where that location might best fit. There are some sanitary sewer repairs that were noted by our public works staff, some old pipe that have dips, and we want to take this opportunity to repair that. And also the whole water main system essentially is going to be replaced. And when we talk about water system replacement, it's generally because it's cast iron pipe. It's susceptible to breaks. They upgrade it to ductile iron pipe, and St. Paul Water does pay for those upgrade costs. So just bear that in mind. The overall estimated project cost is $8,388,000. We have a number of project funding sources, include GEOBOND, special benefit assessments, environmental utility fund, sanitary sewer fund, funds from St. Paul Regional Water, which I spoke to for the water main replacement, as well as some funds from our WAC fund. To kind of give you a timetable, tonight you're going to be considering accepting the feasibility report. We will be holding another neighborhood meeting prior to the proposed public hearing date to answer further questions and also work with residents on the proposed design. Public hearing is the big meeting, as you know. That's the residents' opportunity to address the council on the project. We'd host another neighborhood meeting prior to the assessment meeting to again go over the plans with the residents. This is when we get to about that 95% design, and also provide answer questions about the assessment process with construction taking place this spring and going throughout the summer. And with that, I'm available for questions. Staff does recommend approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the Dennis McClellan Area Streets Improvement City Project 19-10.
Thank you for that presentation. You know, in looking at these projects, this is a very big project with a lot of different moving components to it. Some of our projects are a little bit smaller than this, but this is, water mains and sidewalk on one area, and so there's a lot to it. This morning I requested the copies of the petition. They weren't included in our packets, and I think Ms. Sint, if we could add this to it, because this was all provided to the council this evening, so we should have that as part of our formal record as well. Councilmember Smith.
Two questions. One on Upper Afton, as we're looking at the pedestrian stuff there. I do recall having worked with the Carver School PTO. There's been some issues around traffic, beginning of school, end of school. Is there anything we can do as part of this project to help mitigate that?
Mayor and Council, I don't know if we can do a lot about traffic itself. Our project is really tied to the neighborhood streets, but certainly, one of the I mentioned the enhanced crossings potentially at the school that could provide additional safety for people that are crossing back and forth. Also, reducing the number of crossing, because you kind of get into a fatigue if every two homes there's another striped crossing point. Having some set ones at key locations will provide, safer crossing.
Understood. I think just as we think about if there's, I know we're not ripping up Upper Afton too, but if there's opportunities for us to look at lane painting or other kinds of traffic controls part of the engineering, I think that'd be helpful. And then can you talk a little bit about sort of what is involved and what is our criteria for burying power lines versus leaving them where they are?
Mayor and Council, so my experience with burying power lines is we have done it in a couple key areas as part of redevelopment. And generally, the city does have to pay for the burial of those lines. It is pretty expensive, so it's generally been limited to a couple key areas. In residential areas, we have not been doing that on our street projects.
Money situation?
Correct. Mayor and Council, that is correct. The money really becomes a significant factor in it.
What do you think what is that as a add-on?
Mayor and Council, I guess if I'm remembering correctly, for example, Frost Avenue, this recent project, That was well over $1 million in burial costs. I'm not sure the linear feet of power lines that are out there, but it would significantly increase the project costs.
Thanks.
Councilmember Juniman.
Well, this is one of those that, in the whole scope of things, you'd have to say 36 out of 100. It's almost a no-brainer. I walked those streets in October of 2018, way over a year ago, and I thought, this neighborhood's going to be underwater any day now. I'm sure they're really glad to see this coming, and you can tell by the amount that this project is demanding in drainage improvements and the sewer improvements and the water system improvements, that this is, people thinking, oh, South Lake, well, this is old South Lake. This is one of our older neighborhoods, and they are really in dire need. There is no doubt. I'm sure they're going to be glad when it's all done. I know what, they're tearing their hair a little now about a whole summer like this, but it's well worth it, and I have to say, this is a very needy area for getting upgrades, very.
Is there a motion?
I move approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing on the Dennis McClellan Area Improvement City Project 19-110.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. The motion to approve the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the Dennis McClelland area street improvements. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Love, you are on for our next project, which is the Schaller area pavement rehabilitation.
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you. So this project represents a continued investment into the pavement conditions on the South Leg area. We've been doing a number of projects in this area, doing full-depth reclamation. The project area here, as you can see, lies east of McKnight Road, south of Linwood, and north of Highwood. There's a little section of Schaller and O'Day Street that's east of Sterling Street. The pavement condition, this is really a pavement rehabilitation project. So again, this is different than a full street reconstruction project. We're really concentrating on the condition of the pavement. There's 2.4 miles of streets associated with this project. It has a PCI rating of 36 out of 100. Again, that is 100 being a brand new road. Again, the pavement, as you can see in the picture here, is deteriorated to the point where our spring patching and maintenance is not going to be able to keep up with it. Majority of curbing is in good condition, and so are the utilities. So when we, that's a key thing, is that the majority of the utilities are in good condition, because that's one of the big differences between, are we going to do a full reconstruction project or are we going to do a pavement reclamation project? So we sent out an informational packet in October 14th of 2019. Again, this has very similar information as I mentioned at the previous presentation. We held a neighborhood meeting on November 7th. We had a number of questions about funding sources, timelines, and just some of those standard questions about what is this project going to entail. The proposed scope, it's, as I mentioned, it's a full-depth reclamation. So as the picture shows here, we're going to be grinding up that pavement and mixing it with the aggregate base underneath. We'll create a new sub-base for our road, a nice uniform section. We'll be able to implement a new crown in the road to help drainage. We'll do some spot replacement for deteriorated curb sections. There's some minor storm sewer work in this area that our crew called out. We know they brought to our attention a number of storm sewer catch basins that have had a history of issues. So we're gonna fix those before we put the new pavement down. And some just adjustments when you adjust that, put the new crown in, there's some adjustments to some of the utilities, so some minor utility adjustments. The project cost is $2,032,000. The project funding comes from our Street Revitalization Fund, assessments, sanitary sewer funds, our EUF fund, as well as our WAC fund. Tentative schedule, we'll be hosting another neighborhood meeting in February prior to the proposed public hearing. Again, the public hearing is that, I like to say this each time, it's that main chance for residents, if they're for it, against it, or neutral, to address the council about the project. Following public hearing, we'd host another neighborhood meeting to both show them the 95% plans as well as provide more information about assessments and answer questions. The assessment hearing would be in April, and again, the construction would start in the spring and go through the summertime. With that, I am available for questions. Staff does recommend approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the shallower area street improvements city project 19-11.
Council members, are there any questions? Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any reason why streets this age are in as dire straits as the ones that are a lot older that we just talked about?
Mayor and Council, the projects that we've been doing down in the South Leg, what we've been seeing, it's very common in a number of the cities throughout the metro area. It's this pavement stripping issue. It goes back to the date of, I believe, late 80s, early 90s, when the oil or the asphalt mix that was being used industry-wise is having this stripping problem. We don't use that same mix today, but that's the issue that a lot of cities are tasked with facing, and it's that actually led to a grassroots effort for us to address more of these roads, and that led to franchise fees and also the creation of the SRF fund.
Thank you. Just so people realize why we're doing streets that are this much newer. Obviously, it's not a necessity if you live there, but it was something that was beyond our control, and that's why we don't have to do the massive utility rehabs.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Knutson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just have a observation, and then I guess it leads to a question. I actually did look at a lot of these borings over the weekend to help me get to sleep. But it looked like a lot of variability when you go back. And so follow up even to Councilman Juniman's question was there a lot of variability in the subsurfaces below the pavement back in the?
Mayor and Council, so where some of the variability comes from, it can come from a couple things. It could come from the fact that these neighborhoods are actually built at different times as different projects. I know there's a couple streets, I believe, on this project where they have full depth asphalt, and so that's like a foot or 14 inches of asphalt with no aggregate base.
Okay, yeah.
So we have to do something different there. Also, it depends on, is that soil boring where there was a repair done or patching? So there's a lot of things that can affect that, but it's not uncommon to see some variation.
And generally speaking, we can fix most of the subsurface problems at this.
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, so the nice thing about this project, you are reusing some of that old asphalt and you're grinding it in and you're mixing it with that underlying aggregate base. So you're creating a brand new layer of aggregate base that will be uniform for the whole road. We've had some really good success with that on our projects, and then you put a whole new layer of asphalt. I much more recommend these type of projects over a mill and overlay, because you take off just part of the top layer of asphalt, but everything underneath that remained the same. And a lot of times what you see through mill and overlays is reflective cracking coming up within a year or two. So yes, we are actually providing, I think, a better quality product for our residents.
Thank you.
That's cool. Any other questions? Council members, is there a motion?
I move approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the shallow area pavement rehabilitation city project 19-11.
Second?
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson. The motion to approve a resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the shallow area pavement rehabilitation project. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And our third project for tonight is the, let's see, County Road B and Arcade Street. Mr. Love.
Mayor and Council, thank you. As you mentioned, this is the third project of the night. As you probably know, it's our goal to do 2 projects a year. This one, I just want to take a little extra time on it. This one was sped up, if you would, advanced, because Xcel Energy next summer is going to be doing the second phase of their large gas trunk line replacement. You might remember it, all the work that happened east of White Bear here over the last year. They're doing the same thing, and their route is going to be running up Arcade and then taking a left down County Road B. So that project would essentially be tearing up half the road as it is. So, you know, trying to, I think, do the right thing by inconveniencing the residents with only one summer of construction rather than coming back and then having to fix the other half of the road at another year, as well as capitalize on a joint project with Xcel. So I'll go into that a little bit. As the map shows here, we're talking about County Road B, lying between Edgerton and Arcade Street, and Arcade Street lying south of 36, down to where it matches in south of Roselawn to Highway 61. So this is 1.45 miles of streets here. The pavement rating is a little higher than the other neighborhood. It's a 46 out of 100. Still, that is not a great rating for our streets. There are a number of drainage issues in this area, as well as some notes here about significant icing, lack of storm sewer, and lack of concrete curb and gutter along the project. As I mentioned, Xcel Energy, it was really the catalyst that got this moving, their pipeline project. We did have an informational packet that went out on October 10th, providing information about the project, questionnaire, and information about assessments. The neighborhood meeting was held on October 23rd of 2019. The presentation was given as well, and then a question and answer session followed. Again, the areas of discussion was Xcel's Energy's involvement in the project, drainage concerns, proposed walk layouts, parking concerns. So the proposed project, we're working with Xcel. We're also working with our consultant, Bolton and Mink, on this project, and we're coordinating with them closely. So what we're lining up is for Xcel Energy to be able to come in, do their gas main replacement, followed closely behind our crews doing water main replacement, and then full street reconstruction. So we're trying to line it up, and they're coordinating the timing of their project with our project so that this can seem like essentially one project for the residents, rather than putting them through 2 years of construction. We are proposing a full street reconstruction project, new concrete curb and gutter, new aggregate base section, as well as new asphalt. There will be storm sewer upgrades. We are proposing to continue the 8-foot wide walk along the south side of County Road B. As you might recall, we built that between 35 and Edgerton, and now this would bring it Edgerton to Arcade, and then a proposed walk on Arcade Street. This also would then tie into the boardwalk, which is now you're starting to see this long connection all the way from City Hall all the way out to 35 that you can make. So it was just a number of years ago where we were looking at how are we going to get this done, and a number of projects have came along that have allowed us to get to this point. There's going to be some minor sanitary sewer repairs. Again, we met with St. Paul Regional Water, and they are recommending removal of a good chunk of the existing water main out there. It's cast iron pipe again, which is the stuff that is more susceptible to breaking, and having it replaced with ductile iron pipe. Again, those costs are borne by St. Paul Regional Water Services. The estimated project cost is $5,048,900. The project would utilize geo improvement bonds, street revitalization fund money, special benefits, the UF sanitary sewer funding from St. Paul Regional Water, our WAC fund, as well as Xcel Energy. Xcel Energy is going to be contributing money for what they would have had to pay their contractor to finish off their project. So they would have had to pay a contractor to do restoration, asphalt curb, aggregate base. And what we're going to do is we're going to take over the responsibility of doing that, and they're going to be reimbursing us for those costs. That way, the road is to our specs, under our inspector, and, and they're also getting a benefit by having us wrap up that project for us. Following this, there'd be another neighborhood meeting on February 6th of 2020 prior to the public hearing. Again, the public hearing's that opportunity for residents to address the council. Assuming that moves forward, we'd host another neighborhood meeting in April. This would again be about plan review and assessment questions. Assessment hearing would be in April of 2020, and construction would begin in May and go through the construction season. With that, this one's a little bit longer because we are using a consultant on this project, given the tight coordination we have to do with Excel and our staff already leading two designs of our other two design projects. So the recommendation is approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, calling for a public hearing at 7 p.m. on February 10th, 2020, and utilizing the services of Bolton and Mink Incorporated to complete the final designs for the County Road B and Arcade Street improvements, City Project 1922. And Bolton and Mink has been leading us through the, assisting us with the feasibility report as well as preliminary design ideas. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. First, I want to commend you for the flexibility that you and our department have in taking this project, because it makes most sense not to rip up the road 2 summers in a row, but rather to move this project around and get this done so that we can collaborate with excuse me, other entities. It's really a huge benefit to our residents, so thank you very much for that. Excuse me, one question that I have, and I saved it for the third report because it was a theme that I saw come up in each one of the reports, and it was about lighting. Can you talk a little bit? Each one of the reports noted that residents had talked about lighting. Can you talk a little bit about what our lighting requirements are and how we determine lighting in our city?
Mayor and Council, so as we do these projects, we'll be looking at the lighting through the lens of our street lighting policy. Our policy is really about providing adequate lighting for vehicle traffic or traffic in the roadway area. That includes lighting at intersections, it includes lighting at dead ends, as well as if there's long curves in the road. It isn't lighting along a sidewalk, to provide just lighting along a sidewalk. So that is what we're going to be doing on all 3 projects.
Okay, thank you, because I think that will help respond to some of the concerns that were raised by our residents. And, council members, also looking at all 3 of these projects, this is going to be a big summer for construction. I've been adding it up, and it's a little over 6 miles of construction that we're going to be doing, which that's pretty big. A lot of miles there. And it's also a little over $10 million worth of street projects. And, sitting here in January, when it's supposed to be snowing outside, I think this confirms that in Minnesota we have 2 seasons, because we're talking about summer and road construction, and it's going to be snowing, I think tonight, at least that's what I heard. So we have winter, and now we're gearing up for road construction. So there you go, Council. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. So we're basically going to be the managers on this on this project, correct?
Mayor and Council, so Bolton and Mink will provide construction inspection. Our Assistant City Engineer, John Jaroche, will be overseeing the project. Bolton and Mink does have a project manager that will be also leading it. So if there are resident issues, that's where John can work with the residents, but our consultants will be out there as well.
So my point is, it's an XL project that sparked this, but we are basically treating this like a road project. We are overseeing it, and then when people have issues, we will deal with them rather than...
Correct, Mayor and Council. That was one of the advantages I saw of doing the project this way, is that all the restoration work is ours.
Yes.
Generally, that's where 90% of the questions come from residents. Did it get sodded? Is my driveway right?
Right.
Is the curb in front of my house right? Those things are all going to be done by our crews. Excel is essentially going to be doing removal for what they need to remove as part of the project, replace the gas main, and then fill and then backfill. The street building and the restoration work will be all done by our project, but they'll be contributing towards funds towards that project.
Okay, so the initial project by Excel, if there are issues then, do people still contact us, or do they contact Excel?
Mayor and council will work closely with Excel on issues during the pipeline. The Excel actually contacted me, and I was going to be speaking to City Manager Coleman about this. Is they wanted to come forward and give you guys another update prior, kind of like they did prior to this one. So I would see that at a future
Okay.
Meeting. But they provide residents. They do a lot of that initial coordination, all the letter hanging, the working with the residents as they go in front of their driveways. Coordinating with them. We want them. We want Excel coordinating that part. But when it switches over to the project, we want them working with us.
Okay, that's kind of where I was going, so you sort of read my mind.
Yep.
Because there were some issues this last hunk they did with just that. And so I don't know if you do the input because you're dealing with them or what, but they need to be one hair better on door hangers and notifications. And partially because our residents are used to what they get from our staff. And so when they don't get it, and it's in their street in front of their house, they think it's us. So the first thing is, we're going to tell everybody we know that it's not us, and maybe we could help them or prod them or something with some of their notifications. Because I just don't want our staff to be blamed for it, because normally we do a really good job of signage and where your mailbox is going to be and all those types of things. And if it gets off to a bad start with another entity, they'll have to wear the hat.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Mayor. On the Arcade Street to the north of County Road B, it seems to me there's a sidewalk there. So is this, is it going to go far enough to connect? Because I'm thinking of that boardwalk in the Keller Park. It's kind of a nice circuit.
Mayor and council, we're at the feasibility level. It will be going up to that. Now, the initial feasibility report is showing that the sidewalk might be on the west side of the road rather than the east side due to the wetlands.
You'd have to cross.
But
right.
yes, the idea would be to tie
that
into
whole
that.
circuit.
Yep.
It's a good idea. Thanks.
Great. Council members, is there a motion?
Well, okay, to be complete, I will move the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, calling for a public hearing, and utilizing the services of Bolton and Menk to complete the final design, County Road B and Arcade Street Improvements, City Project 19-22.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett. Rock, paper, scissors down there, I saw that. Motion to approve a resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications, calling for a public hearing, and utilizing the services of Bolton and Mink to complete the final design for the County Road B and Arcade Street improvements. Any further discussion, council?
We will just make sure that Mr. Love stays on top of the Excel people to keep them on their toes.
I'm sure he will. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Love.
Okay, thank you. That was
And we are moving on to our last agenda item, which is the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement with International Association of Firefighters, Fire Officers, Local 4470. Mr. Sable is going to be making that presentation. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Mike Sable, Assistant City Manager and HR Director. The item before you is the approval of the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement with the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, Fire Officers, Local 4470. This is an agreement that previously expired on December 31st of 2018. By way of background, this will be our 7th and final collective bargaining agreement for this contract period. So you have seen this presentation 6 times previously. The City Council first saw this item in roughly August of 2018. And at that strategy session, you set forward a framework for alignment with that contracts would be aligned with the council direction and vision and goals, that there be some internal equity, which is another way of saying some consistency within contracts among the agreements, that there would be a general wage adjustment that would be consistent across the board at roughly at 3% was the targeted amount, that we be aligned with our external market comparisons. So the city uses a group that's called the Stanton 5 Group, and it's largely cities above 25,000 in population. Roughly, that is our peer group. And one of the other benchmark criteria that you set was that we be roughly within the 60th percentile of pay. So not at the top, not at the bottom, but somewhere near the middle, slightly above the middle. The city council directed staff to be consistent and be concerned with ability to pay, which not only factors in financial health and fiscal health, but it makes sure that we have sustainable budgeting over time. So it's a thoughtful approach to contract agreements. And then also consider other economic factors which helps us attract and retain quality workforce. So over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, the city manager and I met with representatives of this collective bargaining unit, which is roughly the fire captains. It is a small but mighty unit of 3. And so really good dialogue, really appreciated the work that they did. They brought forward serious proposals, really respectful dialogue. At a very high level, there are some summaries of kind of where we are with the agreement. We do have a wage adjustment of a 3% for both years, 2019 and 2020. One of the things that is a slight modification from the contract is a step compression. The previous contract allowed for steps. There were a total of 9 steps over a 20-year period. The collective bargaining unit said that they wanted to have a slightly shorter duration of that agreement, and so we actually mirrored some of our language that actually matches what the police sergeants union has. These are critical roles they play in our organization in providing supervision to frontline staff, and we thought that that was an appropriate concession to make. There are some minor adjustments to clothing and equipment. Many of our fire captains also serve as medics in the SWAT team, and so there's some gear that is needed for that. And so there are some other smaller sort of non-cost things that are in there. So what I'll do right now is I will stop and see who has questions about the contract at this point.
I have a point I'd like to highlight for the council. Maybe I'll do it right now. This is kind of something that I'm rather familiar with based on my day job. And I want to commend staff. I know Mr. Sable and City Manager Coleman have worked very hard. This is the last collective bargaining agreement to get done. And in general, I think that there are some good things in here. We're dealing with a small bargaining group, 3 members. They're captains. But there's a point that rubs me the wrong way. And so I'd like to maybe highlight that for the council. And you can find it in Article 12 on hours, which is page 445, that there is already provided in the contract, which is similar to the other contracts. I've talked to City Manager Coleman and Assistant City Manager Sable about this, that there already is in the contract that if they are called out to come into work, they get a minimum of 2 hours. If they get called out, they come in for 20 minutes, they get a minimum of 2 hours, but they're paid at time and a half, which is similar to what we have in our other bargaining groups. This group wanted something added to it, which you find on page 446, which is something that they are calling a mandated return to duty. And what this does is if you are mandated to come in, there's only 3 members of the bargaining group, but if you're mandated to come in, then you get the minimum of 2 hours, but you get it at double time. And that's something that we currently don't have in our other bargaining groups, and my concern is that it sets, I don't want to use the word precedent, because that may be, it sets a pattern, thank you. Precedent has a different kind of term of art, but it sets a pattern that I think we will see then in future bargaining groups. And I think that there's a potential unintended consequence. If you get called, and I'm not saying that this would ever happen, but here's the potential unintended consequence. If you get called to come in and you don't answer, okay, then it would be 2 hours at time and a half, but you aren't mandated to come in. But so you don't answer the call, you don't come in. So then if you're called, then you're mandated, then you get double time. So it potentially creates the uncomfortable wedge of, if I don't answer that call and they have to call me back, I'm going to do it for double time. And that troubles me, and I don't like the fact that this is a new language section that we currently don't have in other contracts. And so, I think that this is a very equitable contract. We have compressed the salary schedule, but this, I have problems with it.
Mayor,
Councilmember, or wait 1 second,
Sure.
Councilmember Neblett? Oh, okay.
I'm more than happy to take all the questions and just do them one at a time. It's up to you.
Sure, let's do one at a time.
Okay. In response to your concern, I think that's a very legitimate concern and something that we talked about as a concern. I think from the perspective of operations, there are times when there are critical incidents, and they're typically this was more thought of in those severe incidents, whether it's a natural disaster or a chemical spill where you actually needed a physical response immediately, some mechanism that can compel staff to respond. And so you really needed a response. Putting some language in the contract that called out that mandatory return to duty, that was the intent behind it, so we could actually have the physical bodies present to respond when there was an emergency or when there was a need. As for your concern, I understand it truly. In talking to the chiefs and the public safety folks, they thought this would be a rare event. I do appreciate your experience that some may choose to not answer the call on the first time, but maybe to pick it up on the second time to get that incremental value. And so I do recognize that some bargaining units will often grab onto other provisions and other contracts to add it in there. The city's not obligated to accept their request, so we can sort of consider this a pilot effort and say, look, we're going to study it for 2 years to see how the response has been, to see how it actually plays out on an operational standpoint. But from a base level, we really wanted to make sure that we had people available to respond when we needed them. And so that was the risk trade-off that we talked about and we put forward.
I guess in response to that, this just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And what I would suggest, what I would like to see happen is to direct staff to go back and talk about this and come up with some other creative solutions to this. That I think that we can find some that don't potentially create this unintended consequence. And I'm certainly not suggesting that anyone would do that, but I think that this creates a potential pattern, and it's something that I just don't think that we need to do that. So that's my thinking on it. I know Councilmember Neblett, you had something else, a different?
I have a question on this, though.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Smith, if you mind?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So, totally understand what you're saying, and it's a good point. Question I have is, I'm not as expert in how these contracts impact day-to-day management as you both are, so it's a question for either or both of you. When I deal with these sorts of things, as we look at compensation plans in my day job, sometimes we take a step back and say, yes, there's a potential for gaming or poor behavior, but is that a management issue that we manage that behavior if it's outside of the spirit of what we're trying to do through the compensation plan? And do we manage that as exceptional behavior that is poor and deal with that through a management perspective, or does that not work if it's in the contract like it is now?
I don't think we're able to, I'll just answer that my read of this language, I don't think we're able to manage that. I don't think that we have that. I think that there are some other creative solutions that are out there in other bargaining agreements that could address that, because certainly we want people to be there when we need them to be there. I think that there's a better way to do this. So, Councilmember Neblett.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's just a question about the clothing and equipment, and maybe I just because I don't understand. It seems repetitive to at first it says each employee in section 11.1. It says each new employee, and then 11.2 says each SWAT medic, and then over here when you come to the top of you struck out 11.1. Then it says replaced by the employer at no cost to the employee. Do you understand my question? It seems repetitive. I'm not sure why this is specific, or it has to be specific to SWAT.
Mayor, council members, Councilmember Nebelit. So the very first one is so I'll try to do them sequentially, right? So the very first one is we will outfit you with the proper clothing and equipment. And then I'll jump to 11.3 is we will replace things that are damaged throughout the course of active work. So we want people to look professional, to have equipment that serves their needs. So those two always go in pairs. The 11.2 is very specific to the SWAT medic. This is a unique special service that they provide to the police department. So when they are on a SWAT call-out, they actually have slightly different gear, slightly different equipment, and we want to make sure that their appearance reflects the service that they're providing. And this was a small concession that the captains raised was an important part that they were looking for. And in the course of negotiations, you choose certain things to fight over and certain things to not. And this was a small concession that was very important to them at the time. And so it helps them to look and maintain a professional attire, helps them fit in with a broader service that they're providing and function at a minimal cost to us. And we don't expect them to actually use the full 400. So for us, it was some value in that.
So thank you. I just so that I'm clear. So they weren't covered under the top of. They were not included in.
Mayor, council members, Councilmember Nebelit, correct. They would use that clothing allowance for other clothing that fit their other functions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that, council members, my suggestion is, Councilmember Juniman, do you have something you'd like to say?
Question actually for him.
Okay.
I think it's for him. You said in response to the mayor's issue, that you said something about possibly to see how this shakes out over a couple of years, so to speak, to see if you're getting what you need out of it. Is there some way that we do that where that's all it is, so that if it becomes problematic, it disappears, or is that too simple a solution?
Before you answer that, can I just suggest that that's at least one of the creative ideas to go back. Right now, this is the proposal. This is all.
Right, I got
We
it.
either voted up or voted down.
But I guess before I want to go either way, up or down, I want to know that that's something we can actually work on that could be worked out. That's kind of what my question is.
Yeah. Mayor, Councilmembers, Councilmember Juniman, I would say, to answer your question directly, it is very difficult to take things out of
I
a
know.
contract once they've been established.
Particularly with this group.
My suggestion about it, kind of the review period, would be more applicable to future contract negotiations
Got it.
with other units who might want the same thing.
Okay.
So we could maybe delay an inevitable train,
Got it.
but if it is very difficult to take things out of contracts once they're in.
Thank you for verifying that.
City Manager Coleman, did you? Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be that I'd like to see staff go back and talk to the bargaining group about this. This is the only proposal that we have, and focus in on this. I think that we have been very generous in terms of this contract, and I think leave it up to staff, and then you come back. This is a contract that covers 2019 to 2020, and so this has been protracted, but one more meeting, I don't think that causes any harm whatsoever. Do we have some consensus up here? Okay. I think we just, is it enough that we just direct staff to go back on this particular issue? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. And council members, we are at the end of our agenda tonight, and we can close out our first meeting of 2020, and I look forward to a wonderful year working with all of you and with our staff as well. So with that, we are adjourned.